Aloha! Welcome to Departures to Alpha Centauri. This is live program 4.5 entitled Consequences. My name is Merlin and I'll be your tour guide. I should start out and say that the image behind me is the Iolani Palace in downtown Honolulu. Believe it or not, the United States has a royal palace on its islands in Hawaii. The Iolani Palace was built back in the 1800s for the Hawaiian monarchy. This is a level 1 program and it's rated PG-13. This program contains mature subject matter and parents are strongly cautioned. We have 7 billion people to evacuate from this earth to Alpha Centauri. But Americans may have a more important reason to want to leave. This program marks the beginning of a new series for Level 1 involving the consequences of actions by individuals and governments and the bad news for Americans. As young children, our parents warn us about messing around with things that we don't understand. Now, here's an electrical outlet. I'm sure you're all familiar with these. And parents, I told you, don't let your kids watch this. And here is a nail clipper. Well, as kids, we're very curious. And kids like to do something like this. They take the nail clipper and they go zap. And now they're in trouble. As our mothers tell us, don't do that, you will get electrocuted. Well, this is an example of the dire consequences when we mess around with things that we don't understand. Maybe the same holds true for governments. In 1993, an apology was issued to the people of Hawaii. It was called Public Law 103-150. Congress passed it. On October 27th, the Senate passed it, and on November 15th, it was passed by the House. What I would like to do is to read to you the text of this apology. The acknowledgement to acknowledge the 100th anniversary of the January 17, 1893 overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii and to offer an apology to Native Hawaiians on behalf of the United States for the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii, whereas prior to the arrival of the first Europeans in 1778, the Native Hawaiian people lived in a highly organized, self-sufficient, subsistent social system based on communal land tenure and a sophisticated language, culture, and religion. Whereas a unified monarchical government of the Hawaiian Islands was established in 1810 under Kamehameha I, the first king of Hawaii. Whereas from 1826 until 1893, the United States recognized the independence of the Kingdom of Hawaii, extended full and complete diplomatic recognition to the Hawaiian government, and entered into treaties and conventions with the Hawaiian monarchs to govern commerce and navigation in 1826, 1842, 1849, 1875, and 1887. Whereas the Congressional Church, now known as the United Church of Christ, through its American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions, sponsored and sent more than 100 missionaries to the Kingdom of Hawaii between 1820 and 1850. Whereas on January 14, 1893, John L. Stevens, hereafter referred in this resolution as the United States Minister assigned to the sovereign and independent Kingdom of Hawaii, conspired with a small group of non-Hawaiian residents of the Kingdom of Hawaii, including residents of the United States, to overthrow the indigenous and lawful government of Hawaii. Whereas in pursuance of the conspiracy to overthrow the government of Hawaii, the United States Minister and the naval representatives of the United States caused armed naval forces of the United States to invade the sovereign Hawaiian nation on January 16, 1893, and to position themselves near the Hawaiian government buildings and the Iolani Palace to intimidate Queen Liliuokalani and her government. Whereas on the afternoon of January 17, 1893, a committee of safety that represented the American and European sugar planters, descendants of missionaries, and financiers, deposed the Hawaiian monarchy and proclaimed the establishment of a provisional government, whereas the United States minister thereupon extended diplomatic recognition to the provisional government that was formed by the conspirators without the consent of the native Hawaiian people or the lawful government of Hawaii, in violation of treaties between the two nations and of international law. Whereas soon thereafter, when informed of the risk of bloodshed with resistance, Queen Liliuokalani issued the following statement, yielding her authority to the United States government rather than to the provisional government. I, Liliuokalani, by the grace of God and under the Constitution of the Hawaiian Kingdom, Queen, do hereby solemnly protest against any and all acts done against myself and the constitutional government of the Hawaiian Kingdom by certain persons claiming to have established a provisional government of and for this kingdom. That I yield to the superior force of the United States of America, whose Minister Plenipotentiary, His Excellency John L. Stevens, has caused United States troops to be landed in Honolulu and declared that he would support the provisional government. Now, to avoid any collision of armed forces and perhaps the loss of life, I do this under protest and impelled by said force, yield my authority until such time as the government of the United States shall, upon facts being presented to it, undo the action of its representative and reinstate me to the authority which I claim as the constitutional sovereign of the Hawaiian Islands. Done at Honolulu, the 17th day of January, AD 1893. Continuing. Whereas, without the active support and intervention by the United States diplomatic and military representatives, the insurrection against the government of Queen Liliuokalani would have failed for lack of popular support and insufficient arms. Whereas, on January 1st, 1893, February 1st, 1893, the United States minister raised the American flag and proclaimed Hawaii to be a protectorate of the United States. Whereas, the report of a presidentially established investigation conducted by former Congressman James Blount into the events surrounding the insurrection and overthrow of January 17, 1893, concluded that the United States diplomatic and military representatives had abused their authority and were responsible for the change of the government. Whereas, as a result of this investigation, the United States minister in Hawaii was recalled from his diplomatic post, and the military commander of the United States Armed Forces stationed in Hawaii was disciplined and forced to resign his commission. Whereas, in a message to Congress on December 18, 1893, President Grover Cleveland reported fully and accurately on the illegal acts of the conspirators, described such acts as an, quote, act of war committed with the participation of a diplomatic representative of the United States without authority of Congress, unquote, and acknowledged that by such acts the government of a peaceful and friendly people was overthrown. Whereas President Cleveland further concluded that, quote, a substantial wrong has thus been done with regard to our national character as well as the rights of the injured people, and requires that we should endeavor to repair, and call for the restoration of the Hawaiian monarchy. Whereas the provisional government protested President Cleveland's call for the restoration of the monarchy and continued to hold state power and pursue annexation to the United States. Whereas the provisional government successfully lobbied the Committee on Foreign Relations of the Senate, hereafter referred to in this resolution as the Committee, to conduct a new investigation into the events surrounding the overthrow of the monarchy. Whereas the Committee and its chairman, Senator John Morgan, conducted hearings in Washington, D.C. from December 27, 1893 through February 24, 1894, in which members of the provisional government justified and condoned the actions of the United States minister and recommended annexation of Hawaii. Whereas, although the provisional government was able to obscure the role of the United States in the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy, it was able to rally the support from 2/3 of the Senate needed to ratify a treaty of annexation. Whereas on July 4th, 1894, the provisional government declared itself to be the Republic of Hawaii. Whereas on January 24th, 1895, while imprisoned in Iolani Palace, Queen Liliuokalani was forced by representatives of the Republic of Hawaii to officially abdicate her throne. Whereas in the 1896 United States presidential election, William McKinley replaced Grover Cleveland. Whereas on July 7, 1898, as a consequence of the Spanish-American War, President McKinley signed the Newlands Joint Resolution that provided for the annexation of Hawaii. Whereas, through the Newlands Resolution, a self-declared Republic of Hawaii ceded sovereignty over the Hawaiian Islands to the United States. Whereas, the Republic of Hawaii also ceded 1.8 million acres of Crown, government, and public lands of the Kingdom of Hawaii without the consent of or compensation to the Native Hawaiian people of Hawaii or their sovereign government. Whereas, the Congress, through the Newlands Resolution, ratified the cession, annexed Hawaii as part of the United States, and vested title to the lands in Hawaii in the United States. Whereas the Newlands Resolution also specified that treaties existing between Hawaii and foreign governments were to immediately cease and be replaced by United States treaties with such nations. Whereas the Newlands Resolution affected the transaction between the Republic of Hawaii and the United States government. Whereas the indigenous Hawaiian people the indigenous Hawaiian people never directly relinquished their claims to their inherent sovereignty as a people or over their national lands to the United States, either through their monarchy or through a plebiscite or referendum. Whereas on April 30th, 1900, President McKinley signed the Organic Act that provided a government for the territory of Hawaii and defined the political structure and powers of the newly established territorial government and its relationship to the United States. Whereas on August 21st, 1959, Hawaii became the 50th state of the United States. Whereas the health and well-being of the Native Hawaiian people is intrinsically tied to their deep feelings and attachment to the land. Whereas the long-range economic and social changes in Hawaii over the 19th and early 20th centuries have been devastating to the population and to the health and well-being of the Hawaiian people. Whereas the Native Hawaiian people are determined to preserve, develop, and transmit to future generations their ancestral territory, and their cultural identity in accordance with their own spiritual and traditional beliefs, customs, practices, language, and social institutions. Whereas, in order to promote racial harmony and cultural understanding, the legislature of the state of Hawaii has determined that the year 1993 should serve Hawaii as a year of special reflection on the rights and dignities of the Native Hawaiians in the Hawaiian and the American societies. Whereas the 18th General Synod of the United Church of Christ, in recognition of the denomination's historical complicity in the illegal overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii in 1893, directed the office of the President of the United Church of Christ to offer an apology, a public apology, to the Native Hawaiian people and to initiate the process of reconciliation between the United Church of Christ and the Native Hawaiians. And whereas it is proper and timely for the Congress, on the occasion of the impending 100th anniversary of the event, to acknowledge the historic significance of the illegal overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii, to express its deep regret to the Native Hawaiian people, and to support the reconciliation efforts of the state of Hawaii and the United Church of Christ with Native Hawaiians. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. Section 1, Acknowledgement and Apology. The Congress, 1, on the occasion of the 100th anniversary of the illegal overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii on January 17, 1893, acknowledges the historical significance of this event, which resulted in the suppression of the inherent sovereignty of the Native Hawaiian people. 2, recognizes and commends efforts of reconciliation initiated by the state of Hawaii and the United Church of Christ with Native Hawaiians. 3, apologizes to Native Hawaiians on behalf of the people of the United States for the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii on January 17, 1893, with the participation of agents and citizens of the United States and the deprivation of the rights of Native Hawaiians to self-determination. 4, expresses its commitment to acknowledge the ramifications of the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii in order to provide a proper foundation for the reconciliation between the United States and the Native Hawaiian people. And 5, urges the President of the United States to acknowledge the, let's get this next one set up, ramifications of the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii and to support reconciliation efforts between the United States and the Native Hawaiian people. Section 2, definitions. As used in this joint resolution, the term Native Hawaiians means any individual who is a descendant of the Aboriginal people who, prior to 1778, occupied and exercised sovereignty in the area that now constitutes the state of Hawaii. Section 3, disclaimer. Nothing in this joint resolution is intended to serve as a settlement of any claims against the United States. Approved November 23rd, 1993, and then the dissent on this was, quote, the logical consequences of this resolution would be independence, unquote, by Senator Slade Gordon, U.S. Senate Congressional Record, Wednesday, October 27th, 1993. And in this picture, we can see President Clinton at the time signing the apology. And at the top we see, after 100 years, U.S. apologizes to Hawaiians. This bill has added insult to injury. The last part of that was no reconciliation, no resolution. It stays the same. There are forces at work in our world that we can't sense with any of our five senses. We can't see them, we can't hear them, we can't smell them, we can't taste them, or we can't feel them. But they're at work anyway. We don't even have to believe in them. Some things are true whether you believe in them or not. In 1993, America had secured its place as the last great superpower. America's only other adversary, the Soviet Union, had disintegrated into 17 countries 2 years earlier. The Cold War was over and no one was left to challenge America's military and economic might. So America felt safe in issuing an apology for the stealing of another country, then bragging about it. Who was left to challenge America's authority? Could there be any force more powerful than America? That brings us back to the forces at work in our world that we can't sense. They're here whether we like it or not, or believe in them or not. And it also brings us back to the rule about not messing with things that you don't understand. If you stick a nail clipper into an electrical outlet, there's going to be a consequence. If you steal a country, confess to the crime, and then say, quote, nothing in this resolution is intended to serve as a settlement of any claims, unquote, then there's going to be a consequence, especially if you steal a country that you don't understand or know anything about. Hawaii is unlike any other place on Earth. It's literally paradise. That's because the most powerful object on the planet is in Hawaii. This object is protected by a force that we can't see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. The force sent the Hawaiians to Hawaii with this object thousands of years ago, and then assigned them the task of protecting the object and keeping its story secret. This force was offended not only when the country was stolen from its, quote, special people, unquote, by the United States, but the force was even more offended when the force was insulted by the thief. And if you don't understand this force, you don't want to mess with it. The United States was contacted repeatedly by the sovereigns of the Kingdom of Hawaii over the next 10 years, but the U.S. continually ignored them. Throughout history, thieves have been punished for their crimes, especially when they confess to them. So the force that can't be sensed began punishing America shortly after the first contact was ignored. The force has continued to punish America with greater and greater intensity ever since. Many Americans have begun to wonder if all the disasters befalling America are biblical in nature. Those Americans are dead on the mark. The force's punishment is going to take on whole new dimensions in the coming months. Americans are now going to feel what it's been like to be in Iraq for the past decade. That is why Americans may have a much more important reason to depart for Alpha Centauri. But the good news is that the force is merciful, and some Americans will be able to escape its wrath. Many Americans will have a safe place to escape to in the center of the country, which is more than can be said for the poor people of Iraq during this last war. In this picture, we can see what's called the safe haven. This is an area in the center of the United States which will be a place where Americans can escape the coming counteroffensive. It's essentially an area that's bordered on the north by interstates 80, 74, and 70, on the south by Interstate 40, in the east by Interstate 81, and in the west by US 93 and US 95. It's called a safe haven. All through history, whenever there were wars and people that were on the losing side were going to be exterminated, the enemy would allow a safe haven, a place of refuge for the vanquished to escape to, where they wouldn't be exterminated. Essentially, that's what these are. Here's another view of the safe haven, and it also shows the sanctuary. There's a section that goes down the center of the safe haven that's also part of a freeway system, and it is Interstates 15, Interstate 70, and Interstate 64. And these will be locations where people in the safe haven can go to escape the coming counteroffensive. That is why Americans may have a much more important reason to depart for Alpha Centauri. The rest of the world, the remaining 7 billion on this planet, have the option to leave. There's no great necessity, except you may not be able to breathe the air. There may not be any food, any water, any shelter, any fuel. But in the case of Americans, they may have another reason to want to leave. Over the next series of programs at Level 1, we'll discuss the causes and consequences of the force's actions and what to expect in the future. Those of you that watch the next series of Level 3 programs will learn, quote, the rest of the story. At level 3, you will learn the identity of the force. And you will learn that all the events that are unfolding for Americans were predicted in a special book. You will learn that all of the major events in Hawaii over the last 200 years were also predicted in this special book. So with that, I'd like to go back and just review for those of you that came in late. This is a picture of President Bill Clinton signing an apology that was made to the nation of Hawaii for the unlawful and illegal overthrow of the kingdom government. And as you can see in this picture, President Clinton is signing the apology. And then we have Vice President Gore, Senator Akaka, Congresswoman Mink, Congressman Abercrombie, and the senator on the left is Senator Inouye, and the senator on the right is Senator Akaka. The main point of all this is that you should not mess around with things that you don't understand. And Hawaii is a classic example. It's just like the electrical outlet and the nail clipper. If you're a kid, don't do this. Parents, don't let your children stick anything in electrical outlets. They will get electrocuted. Don't do things you don't understand. And not only should children not do things they don't understand, but adults and governments should never steal countries that they don't understand, they don't know about. Aloha and ahui ho.